Hello, I'm Jessica Quick, a student at the University of St. Augustine in the Doctor of Occupational Therapy program. I want to welcome you to a presentation on early childhood educators and occupational therapy. Many of you have seen me observing in the classroom and know a little bit about my project, but some of you may not. This presentation or workshop is on bridging the gap between early childhood educators and occupational therapists through the development of an occupational therapy toolkit. I've chose this for my doctorate project because I have always had a passion for early education. Since I was little, my mom has worked and directed an early childhood education program, and I was always there helping out during the summer, and I grew to love it. Since joining OT school, I have found there is often a disconnect between occupational therapists and early childhood educators. Many programs do not have a designated occupational therapist that visits their school unless the program is a part of the public school system. As a result, if a child is receiving occupational therapy, it is at an outpatient clinic, and the teacher has little to no communication with the occupational therapist unless parental consent is given and if the therapist reaches out. In my research, I have found that both early educators and occupational therapists want a way to understand each other better and start to open up communication. So, this is what I'm hoping the toolkit will do. I have also found that many early educators do not know what occupational therapy is, what occupational therapists do, and what skills are worked on, and how we can help. With this toolkit, I hope to give a better understanding to early educators on what occupational therapy is, how occupational therapists can help, and how to help support occupational therapy skills in the classroom. By the end of this presentation, I hope you will be able to identify what occupational therapy is in general and specifically in early childhood education. I hope that you can understand the importance of collaboration between occupational therapists and early childhood educators and how it can help the child. Understand the importance of developmental milestones, identify common developmental delays and deficits, identify what fine motor, visual motor, emotional regulation, and sensory processing skills are, and you will have a toolkit of information and resources that have tools and activities and more to use in your classroom. So, first, what is occupational therapy? Overall, occupational therapy in any setting enables people of all ages to participate in daily occupations or other known as meaningful everyday activities. These occupations include roles such as being a parent, being a friend, being a spouse, being an employee, being a student. All these roles have daily activities or occupations, as we call it, that we are required to do, such as getting out of bed, getting dressed, taking a shower, um, going to work, going to school, doing our schoolwork, cooking. All these things are required for our daily living. Occupational therapists are skilled in research and scientific evidence to increase performance and participation. Sometimes this is with practice, sometimes this is with adapting a skill. Specifically in early childhood or early intervention, occupational therapists help children succeed in occupations or daily activities, including play, feeding, dressing, grooming, toileting, school/daycare, and the skills needed for these occupations. Many do not know the role of occupational therapy in general, but also specifically to early childhood education. Currently, occupational therapy in early childhood education is performed in numerous settings. It can be one on one, so just a therapist and a kid, or in a group, so a therapist and multiple kids. And it can occur in an outpatient setting, so this would be in a clinic. It could be an inpatient setting, such as a hospital or rehab center. It could be home based, where the occupational therapy treats inside the child's home. And school based can be in the classroom with other children, or it can be in a separate room at the school. However, some research suggests if the preschool or daycare is a private or nonprofit, they would need to go out and seek an occupational therapist to come into the facility or have parents find an outpatient clinic. When parents find an outpatient clinic, they have to find time to take the child to the clinic. In my years in early childhood education, I have come to find that many children could and need to receive services, but parents are unable to leave work to take the child. Most preschools in the area often do not have an occupational therapist visit, so the children are not being able to receive the help that is needed. No matter the setting, if the child receives occupational therapy in the early childhood education environment or an outpatient clinic, the occupational therapist role is the same. Occupational therapists use play, adaptation, compensation, remediation, and education strategies to improve occupational performance in the early childhood education environment. Occupational therapists evaluate, create treatment plans, teach skills, assess, adapt the environment, educate parents, and track progress. The hope is that with this toolkit, every childhood educator will have a better understanding of occupational therapy and how it can help both the child and the teacher. The teacher will be able to advocate for the child in regards to occupational therapy and work on similar skills in the classroom. By no way is this toolkit going to make you an occupational therapist, and that is not the goal. The goal is for you to be able to understand what occupational therapy is, how it can help, and if you can work on any of these skills to support occupational therapy in the classroom. We do not expect you to be occupational therapists overnight. This does not supplement occupational therapy. Kids still do need occupational therapy, but this helps you provide some of those skills in the classroom in different ways to help all kids. While all the information in this presentation is in the toolkit that we will provide at the end, I want to walk through all the information with you. So the first section is on developmental milestones for ages birth to 5 years old. At the beginning of the toolkit, the milestones are broken down by age and include not only milestones associated with occupational therapy, such as fine motor skills, visual motor skills, social emotional skills, cognition, but also gross motor and language development, which are worked on in physical therapy and speech therapy. All of these milestones are compiled at the beginning of the toolkit, but they are also individually separated by skill in the chapters themselves. Developmental milestones are important to help identify a child's developmental health and track growth in development. Milestones give caregivers a realistic expectation on what they can work on with their child and celebrate progress through development. Developmental milestones give teachers age appropriate goals that they should be incorporating or working toward in the classroom. Similar to developmental milestones, in the toolkit there are several lists of common developmental deficits or delays seen in early childhood. These lists are compiled based on deficits and delays that I observed in the pediatric occupational therapy sessions and based on discussions with current pediatric occupational therapists. It is common in early childhood to see a delay of age appropriate grasp, so such as how they're holding their writing utensil and if it correlates to their age, hand weakness, core weakness, delay in motor planning to coordinate movements, so not being able to move your body in a certain way, delay of body awareness, delay in hand-eye coordination, delay in communication, slow to respond to the environment, delay in problem solving, delay in manipulation of objects in the hands, delay of working memory, delay in self-help skills, delay of scissor skills, delay in shapes and letter formation, and more. So within these individual chapters, there are more common delays and deficits that are broken down by skill, discussed further. Following the introduction of occupational therapy in early childhood in chapter 1, chapter 2 discusses our first skill, which is fine motor skills. So what are fine motor skills? Fine motor skills are commonly known in early childhood educators. Based on informal interview with early childhood educators, it seems that it is understood that fine motor skills involve the use of our fingers, but not really how to improve or work on that skill. So, fine motor skills involve using fingers, hands, and arms to reach, grasp, and manipulate objects by coordinating movements. These skills are essential for self help, play, and to set the foundation for pre writing and handwriting. These skills are included in everyday activities such as dressing, feeding, grooming, painting, coloring, cutting, writing, tracing, copying, learning, playing games, and much more. We really don't sit down and think how much we use fine motor skills at different parts of our day unless we sit down and list all the activities that we use them for. A lack of or delay in fine motor skills can affect everyday life and participation in many activities, so it's important to set a good foundation for these skills in early childhood. In this chapter, you will find information about fine motor skills, fine motor milestones, information on grasp development, common deficits, and tools and activities that we will talk more about later. Our second skill covered in chapter 3 is visual motor skills. Based on informal interviews, it seems visual motor skills are the skills that early childhood educators know least about. Visual motor skills are the ability to process visual information around you. It is the ability to observe, recognize, and use visual information. Visual motor skills are made up of visual processing skills, visual perceptual skills, and hand eye coordination skills. So, visual processing skills are the ability to understand and use visual information, such as tracking and attention. So, we use visual processing skills when we're tracking the words on a page or when we're attending to a task. Um, we also use visual perceptual skills. These are used to interpret the information seen, such as visual memory or discrimination. So are able to remember what you visually saw, or are you able to discriminate between an A or a B, or are you able to discriminate colors or shapes? Also, hand eye coordination is the ability to use what is visually seen to manipulate and manage objects correctly. So, are you able to place a Q tip in a small hole? Or are you able to place a small bead in a bottle opened? That would be the coordination of our hands moving where our eyes want us to. Visual motor skills are used for everyday activities such as coloring, drawing, writing, dressing, feeding, cutting, completing puzzles, reading, learning, and much more. Visual motor skills and fine motor skills often overlap in regard to working to get together to achieve one task. For example, to be able to copy a shape or a letter, you need fine motor skills to hold the marker and visual motor skills to copy what you see. These skills are often hard to implement in the classroom, and in this chapter, not only will you receive ways to implement this in the classroom, but you will also go over visual motor milestones and deficits. Our next skill covered in chapter 4 is emotional regulation. Based on informal interviews, emotional regulation skills are understood in regards to educators know about it and are taught about it, but teachers want more help and tools for them. So, emotional regulation is the ability to manage and control your own emotions. It involves learning to identify, understand, and manage emotions appropriately. One part of emotional regulation is self regulation. Self regulation is the ability to regulate one's behavior and reactions to emotions in your environment. Emotional regulation and self regulation help children manage their feelings in a healthy way, which can lead to healthy development, better social relationships, and overall well being. Emotional skills are often required for learning, playing, completing challenging tasks, relationships, social interactions, concentration, and much more. With the inability for a lot of children to emotionally regulate, behaviors are often seen. So, in this chapter, what behaviors are and the functions of behaviors are discussed as well. Due to these behaviors often being seen as emotional dysregulation when the child is actually just trying to tell you what they need. Our last skill in chapter 5 is about sensory processing. Based on informal interviews, sensory tactile deficits are very well known by early childhood educators, or sensory being the need to touch something or the not wanting to touch something seems to be very understood. And you try to address those by having activities like sensory bins, but many do not know that there are 8 different sensory systems that go into sensory processing. So, sensory processing is the ability of the nervous system to receive, interpret, and store information from 8 sensory systems. Everyone processes sensory input differently. Sensory processing and integration is foundations to healthy development, function, participation, learning, and overall well being. There are 8 sensory systems that collect information for sensory processing. They are visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, vestibular, proprioception, and interoception. Visual is responsible for seeing, auditory is responsible for hearing, olfactory is responsible for smelling, gustatory is responsible for tasting, tactile is responsible for touch. Vestibular is responsible for balance, orientation and space, and movement of the head. So, vestibular is one that is not commonly known. This involves the inner ear and how our body moves in space. Proprioception is also one that is not very common. It is responsible for position, location, orientation, and movement of the body in space as well. So it is um, the ability to have that body awareness of where you are in the room type. Um, and the last one, which is much not well known, is called interoception. It's responsible for the sensations of internal body functions. So this gives us the sensation of hunger or having to go to the bathroom or thirst, all those internal body functions. Not only are these systems discussed in this chapter, but there are also the 4 types of sensory processing and deficits seen in early childhood in this chapter. So, every chapter, you will find activities and tools separated into skills. So these are ways to implement these skills in the classroom. Majority of these activities can be created using low-cost supplies, and all of the activities and tools have been used in a pediatric therapy clinic or early childhood education program. The activities created took very little time to create. Some activities and tools do involve purchasing moderately priced items, but most of those items you will find in the sensory processing section, such as a weighted blanket or a buzzer toy. But there are plenty of other activities listed that do not require you to buy it. Most of these activities I used by collecting recycled items, so cardboard boxes, bottle caps, bottles, um, and then a lot of the ones that had recycled items. I also used simple craft tools like pipe cleaners, pom poms, um, that way, and paint. That way they didn't cost so much and they were easy to use. Now that we have covered the basics, I would like to introduce you to the Early Childhood Education Occupational Therapy Toolkit. This toolkit was developed by me during 10 weeks of observation and research in both an early childhood education program and an outpatient pediatric clinic. The purpose is to provide early childhood educators with a resource on occupational therapy and increase collaboration between early childhood educators by providing education of the role of occupational therapy. My hope is that by educating you on what occupational therapy does and how we can help, that it will open communication and give you ideas of topics of conversation to help that collaboration. The toolkit includes all information in this presentation, lists of developmental milestones for ages birth through 5, information regarding each skill, low cost activities slash tools broken down by skill, parent handouts and classroom handouts, and a classroom observation checklist for each age. I included the classroom observation checklist because I found during my observations that many teachers do not know what they're looking for regarding skills. So this breaks it down by age. The toolkit provides more detailed information, with each skill broken down into a different chapter. Prior to this presentation, you completed a survey. Please click the link below and review and download the toolkit for safekeeping. Following reviewing and downloading the toolkit, please complete the post survey. This will give me the feedback that I need to complete my project. I thank you so much for watching, and I hope this toolkit helps you now and in the future.